Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of My Dog Will Eat My Face. I'm going to start off this episode right away to update the listeners. Well, I guess the listeners that might be living under a rock. But within the last week, as I'm sure many of you are aware, I lost my best friend. And I don't mean I lost my dumb friend at the mall and he just kind of entered into the aisles never to be seen again or something like that. No, I mean I lost my dog. And he's actually the dog that is referred to in the very title of this podcast. He was my best friend, my companion, my loyal protector. The sweetest, loving boy ever imaginable. And of course, this is not good by any stretch of the imagination, to put it lightly, this loss. It's been crushing and absolutely devastating for me. It's been very difficult emotionally to stay above water. And I don't care what people say about a man crying. I think losing your best friend qualifies quite heavily as a reason for a man to cry. In point of fact, I did also lose my best friend in high school, which I'll describe in a bit, and I cried then too. And as I think about this, I can't help but think of those people that say, "Oh, it's just a dog. What's the big deal?" Now, I'm not a very aggressive person, but I would just love them to say that to my face. I wouldn't need bath salts to go completely cray-cray and attack them. I'm sorry. Losing a dog is in many ways worse than losing a person. And that's what he was, really. He was a person, a four-legged one, a toddler on four legs, but he was a person. He had a deep personality, he had intelligence, he had likes, he had dislikes, he had mood swings, he had favorites that would come and go, and he had all the complexities of what you might expect in, say, an eight-year-old child. And so today, with all that said, I want to talk about loss and what it really means to experience loss. And maybe understand it better in a way that will enable an individual such as myself to move on with my life. I find it also extremely ironic that I'm the one in hospice care and then my dog of 15 years dies. Anyway. So with that said, I'll try to explore how I can handle these events, what they really mean, and for whatever time is left of my life, how I can at least raise myself above the water and still find ways to function. Now, the first time I've lost my best friend, it was actually a human, I should say. It wasn't a dog, and I've had dogs as well in the past, but none I've felt as close to as this last one. I've actually had 2 dogs growing up, and they both obviously passed on. But for me, this dog has been around me the vast majority of my adult life. And so with that, I've just got a much stronger connection to him. But anyway, the first time my best friend, a human, lost his life was just on the outside of high school. I'd actually just graduated high school. And what happened is I was just home alone one afternoon, and I was drafting away, designing buildings on my drafting table. I believe I mentioned this in other podcasts, how I like to draft buildings for fun and try to emulate the Vitruvian style or Palladian style for fun. And so that's what I was doing, drafting away. Not really a care in the world. I was just about to go into college, so it's kind of on a low hiatus between high school and college, and so just kind of killing time until that started. And as I sat there, I heard suddenly a loud knock at the door downstairs in my parents' house. So I mosey on downstairs and check the door, and I see an individual standing there, a man dressed in a very nicely pressed suit. And I just think to myself, my God, what is this salesman doing here? What's he going to try to sell me, carpeting or something? I just had this image of a door-to-door guy trying to sell me, I don't know, encyclopedias, anything. And so I reluctantly answer the door, and he says, "Are you Joseph?" I just go, "Yeah." And he at that point flashes a police badge. And he says, "Can I come in?" I say, "No." Being the insufferable little intellectual that I was, I knew my constitutional rights. So of course I said, "No, you may not come in my home." And then he said, "I think you want me to come in your home, and I think you want to sit down." And I just said again, "No." And that's when I read on his badge, it said he was a homicide detective. And he asked me finally point blank, "Are you Mike's friend?" And as soon as he said that, it just hit me like a bag of bricks. Mike being the name of my best friend in high school. He repeats, "I think you better sit down." So at this point I agreed, and he came into my home, I sat down, and he did as well. And he said, "Last night, your friend Mike lost his life. And unfortunately, it looks like it was a suicide, where he was home alone just before his father came home from work, placed a high-powered rifle into his mouth while he sat down in his closet, strangely, and pulled the trigger." So he questioned me about his mood, how he how he's been the last few days, months. Had he said anything about it? Was he depressed? Was he upset about anything? And to my knowledge, he was really no different. In fact, I saw him the day before and he was perfectly normal. If anything, he was happy. And I later learned that that's common with suicides. That once they decide they're going to kill themselves, they actually feel a relief from whatever pain they're experiencing. They finally have a plan to do something that's going to get rid of this pain. And so they actually get really happy about it and can get really excited because they're going to carry out this plan to kill themselves. So it's actually the opposite of what you might think. If you know someone who is occasionally suicidal or might be really depressed, and then suddenly one day they're in a really good mood, that's actually a really bad red flag. That's not a sign of, oh, good, they're getting better. No, it's a sign that they might have planned something, and you should ask them, and just flatly ask them. So he finished his questions, and he left, and I just sat there in my house. My parents were gone. They were out at the time, and I just sat there by myself, alone, just having talked to the police about my best friend shooting himself. That wasn't the worst of it. The police did ask me to talk to his father, because it's his father that found him. So I agreed to. He called me on the phone, and his father gave me in great detail what he found. He described it, how his body was still warm, how his head was basically off, how his jaw sort of dangled there. He graphically described it to me, and just sobbed relentlessly on the phone. And it's about that time when I really started to break down. And as I said earlier, I think losing your best friend is an okay time for a man to cry. And so he was cremated. It was the memorial. Life went on. I slowly healed from it. Cried occasionally. But unfortunately, losing my best friend to death is not something new to me. Last week was only my second time. So, what does loss or even grief from loss really mean? I think it means loss of a person. And more specific than that, it means the loss of future time with that person. It does not mean, however, that you lost that person at all. In fact, from your existing life or your previous life. I think that's because of having the good fortune of that person in your life can never be taken away from you. This is similar to my pseudo theory of immortality, and I know this sounds kooky here. Bear with me. I promise I won't mention crystals. But with this theory I've kicked around in my head is that everything we do and say can never be taken away from us. It's not dissimilar to the old phrase of, you cannot unring a bell. So no matter what the future holds, you will always have the pleasure of a good person in your life. Your relationship with a childhood best friend can be no more taken away than some other more glorious event, let's say, such as Caesar crossing the Rubicon or the construction of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. These are actually all alike in that they did indeed happen and cannot be made to have never happened. Sure, you could level the pyramids, you could destroy them, but you can't ever take away the fact that they did exist. In fact, all these things, great and small, echo for eternity. So that good relationship, now lost, will too always have been. And one must be honestly thankful for it, because you have to consider the horrible alternative. The curse to have such an unlikely bond never occur, and you left with no benefit in any of your years from those better times with that person. I heard a more cheesy Hallmark stylization of this philosophy recently, totally coincidentally. What it was essentially, it's easy to remember. Grief is just the love that you wish to show those who you've lost, and you cannot continue to show them any more love. And that's cute. I think the issue is far deeper than that, though, however. I think the ill fortune of loss does not negate all the good memories and love that happened. And no matter what, I am very lucky to have ever experienced those good memories and that love. Seneca, of all people, reflected on this, and he kind of produced an amalgamation of these thoughts almost perfectly. I read this recently. I mentioned not long ago I acquired a Marcus Aurelius book on his meditations, and there's some Seneca in there as well, and other Stoic philosophers. But he said, and I don't have this memorized, so you have to forgive me as I do have to read some of it, because I've only learned this in the last few weeks. But his perfect summation of this was, has it then all been for nothing that you have had such a friend? During so many years, amid such close associations, after such intimate communion of personal interests, has nothing been accomplished? Do you bury friendship along with a friend? And why lament having lost him, if it be of no avail to have possessed him? Believe me, a great part of those who we have loved, though chance has removed their persons, still abides with us. The past is ours, and there is nothing more secure for us than that which has already been. And I honestly could not have said it better myself. But that's also probably why I'm not a famous Roman philosopher yet. So I think, based on what I've already said heretofore on this podcast, it makes sense for me to kind of circle things up with giving my thanks to Nero for the memories and the lessons that he taught me. I would tell him he made me a better man. I meant it every time. I took the time almost daily to actually communicate that to him. I don't know if he understood what I was saying. He looked up at me as though he were. He was probably listening intently for the word ham or snack, but I think he understood a lot more than our human brains could perceive. And I really meant it, that he did make me a better man. He taught me patience, and I can always improve on that. All my friends and family will attest for that. It's like, well, you could use some more lessons in patience, but hey, he dared to try to teach me patience, so at least let's give him that. He was brave. He taught me forgiveness and loyalty, how to be silly and playful, and damn others, or damn to others, I should say, for what they think or what they say for me being silly or playful with my dog. I say this because oftentimes when I would walk him, I would sing the most ridiculous songs about him and to him, and for some reason he loved them. He was skipping around and jumping, kind of start playing and prancing. He really liked it when he was sung to. And they were the stupidest songs in the world. And invariably I would turn around and there would be one or two cocked eyebrows of a person close behind thinking, what on earth is this man on? So he taught me that, to be silly and playful, no matter what others thought or said. He taught me the value in separating oneself from a problem. When I worked at from home, I should say, it was not uncommon for me to take him out for just a quick walk, even a 7-minute, 5-minute jaunt outside if I was having a rough day, if I needed to clear my mind, if I needed to just step away from things and focus. And it worked 100% of the time. I mean that sincerely. It worked 100% of the time. And he absolutely taught me how to do that. And even recently, as I think about it, he taught me my most favorite thing may yet be discovered, as he and I both did together recently, only recently learning that our cuddle session at night before going to sleep, while we watched a show on the laptop or something in the bed, became both of our most favorite event of the day. He would jump up at the bed, wanting up when it was time. I'd put him up. He would slam into me to cuddle with me and make these little chirping, pupping noises of glee once we were both on the bed together. And then it was just cuddle, pets, and movie time until we turned off the lights and went to sleep. And this routine didn't even exist several months ago. It's certainly way less than a year. So he's taught me that there might be other favorite things that are out there that I will love, and how many of them are left undiscovered. Adopting Nero was so unlikely. It took 2 trips to the pet store before I even did it. And then the subsequent domination he held over the next 15 years of my life was so unexpected. wonderfully unexpected. And those memories and those years will forever be ours to cherish, never be undone, never remastered, never repeated, forever and ever. He really will echo for an eternity. So maybe in closing here, my Thanksgiving is just coming a week late, because I am indeed thankful for Nero. The friendship, love, and lessons he showed me were real and can never be undone. As Seneca said, there's nothing more secure for us than that which has been. So, shockingly, if I get back to the question of what is loss, perhaps it's ambiguous because it actually doesn't exist. Perhaps the human perception of loss is just a way to adapt a linear timeline to the flow of a mortal friendship. But if what is done can never be undone, what is the real loss? It seems to me the only loss would be in blinding oneself in those gains you had from that friendship. No matter how small, gains or events that can never go away. Loss, in quotes, is just a negative perception of that which soundly and forever is yours. What a wonderful gift. Thank you, Nero, for the wonderful gift. And now when it comes to the podcast name, I honestly haven't decided. I'm leaning towards keeping it as the status quo, kind of as a silly reminder of a silly dog who brightened my days. But we shall see. I reserve the right to change my mind. The title is in no way a suicide pact. But with that, I just want to say thanks for listening. Please don't forget to follow the podcast and turn on notifications so you're reminded of future podcasts. If you really want to support the podcast, you can become a patron with certain benefits that you can explore at different levels. Just go to patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface, and I'll provide a link in the description as well. Again, it's pretty easy. It's just patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface. But above all, thanks to everyone for listening. I truly mean it. Your listenership is above all what matters to me most. And thanks again for doing that. So for now, I'll say, auf Wiedersehen.